Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we'll be talking about the box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw Uncharted continue its dominance atop the box office charts, with Dog coming in at second and number 3 spot once again. So 2 weeks in a row we've had these top three is Spider-Man No Way Home, which continues to make money and continues to have very strong holds from week to week. Before going any further, though, into these numbers and to the very, very slow start to films Studio 666 and Cyrano, the musical, please make sure that you smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. As you can hear, River and Willow are with me once again this afternoon, but we do have some numbers. First off, Uncharted from Sony dropped 47% in the domestic box office, coming in with $23.2 million, bringing its total domestic run so far to $83.3 million after 2 weeks. That means that this film is very much on the way to hitting that $100 million domestic number, and likely well exceeding that, and is, in addition to this, doing very well internationally, and we'll get to that in just a second. Dog, in its second week of release, the movie about a dog and Channing Tatum, has made another $10.1 million, bringing its domestic to $30.8 million, which is just about as much as the film Moonfall has made in the entirety of its run worldwide, which I think says a lot about Moonfall and also says a lot about Dog in comparison. And also, it's crazy to think the budgets between them are very different, which I think also is a great sign that just because you put a lot of money into a film does not mean that you're going to get a lot of money back, and that a lot of it depends on how you market the film, and also what exactly audiences want these days, which typically is escapism, and is typically also wanting to have some type of either original story or feel-good story, or at the very least, the promise of a feel-good story, especially one with a dog, which is why I think the United Artists film is doing as well as it is. Still at over 3,000 screens, actually added on some screens this past week, but again, $10 million this weekend. Spider-Man No Way Home, another $5.7 million, 23% drop there. Death on the Nile did have a strong hold, so $4.5 million in its third week of release, actually also added some screens, but because of its massive budget and the fact that it's holding from a very weak opening weekend, it means that the film is still set and is still likely and expected to lose some money. Jackass Forever still in the top 5 with another $3.1 million, only 39% drop, starting to lose out on some theaters, but it's already made its money back, and so anything it makes from this point forward has been, for the last couple weeks at the very least, raw net profits. Sing 2 continues to be in the discussion as well. Again, crazy to think that this film has been out for 10 weeks and is still out at over 2,000 screens and is doing as well as it is. Again, a sequel to a film that I've never seen, and I never really have an intention to see either film, and yet it looks like it was able to get enough families out to go see it to not only bring its money back, but also bring some profits as well. The film Marry Me made $1.8 million. This is starting to lose out on over 500 theaters, and again, has a chance to break even, but still has a ways to go. And this gets us to the newest releases. That's right, the newest releases this week saw a new release in Studio 666, a brand new release, in fact, in Open Road Studio 666, which saw $1.5 million at over 2,000 screens. Not a very strong start there in comparison to Cyrano, which has technically been out for 11 weeks because its opening weekend was about 11 weeks ago in a very limited marketplace. Still a very limited film. And so as you can see, at 797 screens, again, just 797 screens, it actually made about $1,000 per screen, or almost about $2,000 per screen. So when you compare that to Studio 666, even though that film technically had a higher number in its weekend, and again, Cyrano was said to have had an opening, I guess, a more wide opening. You would expect that a wide opening of some kind would be at least a couple thousand screens, but apparently they don't have a lot of confidence in the film, because if they did, they would have put this out in more. But again, $1.4 million is all that it's made so far. So even though it's been out for a long time, it really hasn't done much of anything in the theaters that it has been playing at, which I think says a lot. And even though it did technically perform better than Studio 666, the budget for Cyrano makes it so that this is, again, likely to be another box office flop. We'll have to wait, of course, for more of those numbers to actually come in. And if they decide, if that's United Artists, of course, decides to expand that release a little bit more. Again, this is all about them putting it out early, trying to get some attention for award season, and I don't think it really worked out for them in their musical version of the classical story of Cyrano de Bergerac. We also have Scream dropping to number 10 this week with $1.3 million. Again, still as after 7 weeks making a little over $1 million for the weekend. Not perfect, not amazing. However, it's made the money that it's needed to. Anyone that wanted to go see it has already seen it. And so it's doing exactly what, it can really do at this point. $900,000 from 156 screens is a pretty awesome per screen ratio. Look at that, $5,700 per screen from the 50th anniversary of The Godfather, which just goes to show you that, older films, it seems, will actually turn out people a lot more than even newer films and even some of the more recent of releases, especially when you compare that to a film like Uncharted or Dog. It's pretty amazing that the film was able to do as well at the limited number of theaters that it was. Blacklight, Moonfall also had, I guess, some money you could say that they made. The real, I think, the tragedy, one could say, as far as box office numbers are concerned, is Moonfall, which has only made $18.6 million in 4 weeks. As I mentioned before, just compare that number to the entire domestic run of Dog, and you realize, man, oh man, they just did not know how to market that movie and are going to take a massive loss. What is not expected to take a massive loss, though, is actually the film Uncharted, because this film has actually gone all the way to $226 million worldwide. Many of the box office websites have not fully updated yet, and so if you do your own research, your own charting, etc., you may not get this number, but this is what's being reported by Deadline and the other mainstream outlets, and so it's just a matter of time before they eventually update these numbers. But $226 million worldwide by its second week of release, and the end of its second weekend means that this film is projected to make its money back and also to make a pretty fair amount of profit to boot. Of course, the big question is, how much profit will it make, and will the Batman be able to kind of dive into and take away from some of those profits? I think it might. I think that the Batman will definitely be eating away at a lot of the success that this film has had. However, I do still expect Uncharted to be in the top 3 next week. I think it probably will still be even top 2. Of course, that is, unless Spider-Man No Way Home is somehow able to bump back up to that spot. Again, still in the top 3. But we'll have to, of course, wait and see exactly what happens with it. Either way, Uncharted is still doing incredibly well. The question is just, how well will it do? How much money will it make? Because it is, again, bare minimum going to be able to make a little bit of profit. And so that seems like a pretty much a giveaway at this point in time. So obviously, a lot of the box office projections for this film were very, very far off the mark, which is not too surprising in the fact that they have been pretty wrong about a lot of films this year. However, it is definitely one that is very surprising to me at the very least, because based on the initial marketing and based on the initial based on the initial numbers, the initial estimates, it didn't seem like this film was going to do much of anything, but clearly it is doing a lot better than what many people had expected. And so, hey, kudos to Sony for having yet another box office success on their hands. And we actually dive into those individual numbers. As you can see, the number has not updated here on the numbers, but the film is, again, $224 million after 2 weeks. Dog up to $32 million. So again, some of these numbers may not be the final for the 2 weeks of release or the most up to date as far as the foreign numbers are concerned, but $32 million after 2 weeks makes this film primed also to make its money back and to make some profit. Spider-Man No Way Home up to $1.85 billion. So this number has not updated either, but $1.85 billion. The big story is that, it's beaten the box office for Titanic, which, just remember, doesn't mean anything, because Titanic, we have to adjust that for inflation, and it's a lot more than the $1.85 billion that has been made so far by Spider-Man No Way Home. It's still incredibly impressive, and it still, again, destroys that pandemic narrative. However, again, I think it's important whenever you're saying it's beating certain films' records that you do adjust it for what the film would have actually made in today's dollars, because that's really the only fair comparison, since we can't just compare raw ticket sales themselves. Death on the Nile still not making really anything at all. It will be lucky, I think, to cross the $100 million mark worldwide as more films start to come out, especially films like The Batman, which will definitely be eating up the marketplace. Jackass Forever, $64 million. Sing 2 at $336 million. Again, pretty impressive there. Marry Me at $39 million. Studio 666. As you can see, all we have right now from this film is that it's come out domestically at $1.58 million. We don't have a budget for this film yet, so hard to say whether or not the film really is a box office success or not. Not that they were expecting this to be a massive hit, but definitely I think they were probably expecting it to do a little bit better than this. We'll have to, of course, wait and see if they ever update those numbers. As you can see from Cyrano, though, even though the film is technically a 2021 release, as they did have a limited release in 2021 to try and get it some Oscar contention, which it got, a couple of categories, but nothing really that major. This musical version of the story, again, also changing it from someone with a large nose to someone who is a dwarf, is not doing much of anything at all, which isn't really all that surprising. Haven't really heard a lot of people say many exciting things about it. As much as I like Peter Dinklage as an actor, as far as just the ability that he has as an actor, I think recent comments that he has made has definitely turned a lot more people off to him, just in a general sense. Scream 5, as I had mentioned, pretty much has evened out at this point, making $136.5 million. Blacklight is up to $9.2 million, another, again, box office flop for the year. And Moonfall probably will be the biggest box office flop for the year 2022, as it is still hovering around $200 million right as of today. $200 million in the red for its entire run. Looking at some charting, because we like box office charting, let's look at some charts. Why don't we? We can go ahead and look at, again, opening weekends for Cyrano with 1.4 million, 1.5 million for Studio 666. Uncharted, 139 million is the opening weekend, but the weekend 2 is 226, and Dog is $32 million. And so because we have the 2-week totals for those two films, we can make some projections. And so right now I can project that Uncharted will make somewhere between 322 and 452 million in its box office totals. Again, obviously this film could under or overperform in either of these cases, but based historically on where most films end up somewhere between twice what they've made after the first 2 weeks, or as small as making 70% of the entirety of its box office in the first 2 weeks of release, as most people see the film typically in those first couple of weeks. And only films that have very strong legs, that are able to keep strong numbers going on for a long period of time, are able to really double that, or even more than double that number in the long run. So again, based on just my own research that I have done, between 50 and 70% after the first 2 weeks is just about where most films fall. And so again, that's the reason why I stake a lot of trust in that system. But again, 322.8 million is the likely minimum number for the film. 452 is the maximum. This film needs to make 300 million to break even. Dog is right now expected to make around 45.8 to 64 million dollars. So either way, very good look for that film. In the case of, as I mentioned before, Uncharted, $300 million is its magic number, which it will likely hit by next weekend, while Dogs is 37.5, which also will likely be hit by next weekend, if not before. And so as far as the actual net gains and profits are concerned, as you can see, we have $13 to $91 million in net profits. So this is when you subtract the budget, when you subtract the likely marketing costs, and also when you take into account that they only get about 60% of the box office. This is what you end up with at the end. And so 13.7 to 91.2 million in net gain profit is the most likely scenario. It could be a lot higher. Obviously, it is set to release in China in March, which could definitely bump up those numbers. But The Batman is also expected to have a China release, as well, as both studios, both Sony and Warner Brothers, have decided to work with the CCP, which guarantees them millions of dollars to continue their human rights violations. But of course, that is just something I always have to just mention off the top of my head, because it's important to remind ourselves of what's actually going on in the world. And so as you can see, Dog, though, in its second week of release, because of its numbers, is likely to make somewhere around 5 million to 15 million in net gain profits, right now being at 32 million, so not too far away from its break even. And again, likely to get there either by next weekend or at least by the end of next weekend. As I had mentioned last weekend's in that box office breakdown, Death on the Nile and Marry Me are both expected to, or rather, Death on the Nile is expected to be a box office flop. Marry Me has the potential to make its money back, so we'll see exactly where that film ends up. As of right now, though, it is at $11 million in losses, and again, the numbers are just going to keep on going down as far as how much it gets, because especially of films like The Batman coming out. Death on the Nile right now, $85 million. So far, compared to its second week of release, it's made about 92, based the 2 weeks versus the total it's made so far is about 92%. So as you can see, definitely not doing very well week to week. Uncharted and Dog are in their second week of release, which is why these two numbers are at 100. That will go down over time. But right now, Uncharted is at 44.4 in the red. Again, as I said, likely we'll make that up by next weekend, and Dog is only about 3.2 million in the red. Whereas with Cyrano, because that film cost $30 million, meaning its break even is around 75 million, this film right now is around $44 million in the red at this point in time. So yeah, not a very not a very good look for it. And actually, this is something where I might even have to look at the calculations on this, because this one actually doesn't even seem all that right based on the numbers that they are. So I'm actually probably have to dive in there and actually look at it and fix that. But either way, Cyrano, definitely a big box office flop, at least at this point in time. We'll have to wait and see if anything changes. But what are y'all's thoughts about Uncharted? Again, doing very well worldwide, so likely to be able to make some profits. Again, the big question will be just how much money will it make against the Batman. I think the Batman is going to cause a lot of competition, is definitely going to take the vast majority of the marketplace next weekend, as it is a PG-13 film, and so therefore can reach out to more audiences. And obviously Uncharted is in a similar territory, but it will have had 3 weeks of release, whereas the Batman will be the new film on the block. And obviously, we're going to have some pretty early indications, because there is a lot of early showings of the Batman this week. There is the fan event on Tuesday in IMAX. There is a screening that I'm getting to go to, which is the IMAX screening that was being shown, or rather the IMAX. I think there's probably some other screenings too for investors of AMC product. So again, there's an investor screening on Wednesday, so the day after the fan event. And then, of course, the film itself opens to the public early, with shows as early as I think 3 p.m. or so on Thursday. And so we'll have a pretty good idea of how well the film is doing. Expected to make well over $100 million domestically in its opening weekend. And likely to be the next major box office hit, which could potentially, maybe, be even in the billion-dollar territory discussion. But what are y'all's thoughts about Uncharted? Do you think that the film is going to be able to hold off the Batman at least a little bit to reach its break-even point by next weekend? I think it definitely has a strong chance of doing so. Do you think that Dog is going to be able to reach its break-even point by the end of next weekend as well? And also, what are your thoughts about any of the other films that I've mentioned, especially films like Cyrano? Do you think that it's going to somehow make its money back? Again, the per-theater number is not terrible. However, the question is just how much confidence do they have in the film? And I don't think it is very much. And then also, what have you heard about Studio 666? Because all I've ever heard of is the title, and the title alone makes me go, not really something that seems like my cup of tea at the very least. Let me know your thoughts about this and anything else that I mentioned in the comment section down below. Also, check that pinned comment and make sure that you vote in this year's Wednesday Raven Awards, or keeping the things open just for a little bit longer. Keep the ballot open for a little bit longer, because remember, it is a boycott of the Oscars, as we, again, very much understand that the Oscars have been, for a very long time now, but especially the last 10 years or so, really have just become complete and utter trash. And so we have our own award show here on the channel. It's the 4th year that we're doing it. So check out that pinned comment if you have not submitted your own ballots yet. You can, of course, edit them after the fact too. So if you are not sure of every single category, you can say undecided as an option, and you can come back and edit it down the line if you so choose. But check that out and make sure you submit your vote, because, again, it will be closing pretty soon. I was going to try and get it close to the end of February, which is technically tomorrow. So probably the next few days it will be dropping and it'll be closing up. Again, I'm going to have to look and check and see exactly when the Oscars are happening this year, because obviously I don't care about that, because we'll be boycotting it at the same time for as long as we can. Anyway, let me know your thoughts about that. Anything else I mentioned in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, light up that fire button on Odyssey. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my Patreon Subscribestar and Locals members, starting off with Patreon animation commentator Brandon, let's go Brandon, Brian P, Christopher Bowman, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you Father, Father Damian Cook, Fuzz Aldrin, Garrett Searles, Hannibal Grimm, Harold Francis, Hymir Ari Hymason, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyles 79, Laura, The Modern Major General's Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Ellen, Stan Andrian, Teresa Martin, or Miss Martin Muses, Theodore Benden, Tina Bojan, and Tina B, the Empress of the Universe. Thank you very much for supporting me over on Patreon. Also to my Subscribestar peeps, UAB Mad Dog, which is Mr. Mike Jackson, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stand For, John B, Mr. Roy, Glinzer,
J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. And also a huge shout out to the newest members over on Subscribestar, TL John, Trent Johnson, and Matt317. Thank you all very much for supporting me over on the Subscribestar platform. And to my 3 local supporters, we got Kara Tharp, UAB Mad Dog, which is once again Mike Jackson, super supporter over there, and Robert Barnes. Thank you very much for supporting me over on the Locals platform. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, please think about signing up on either of those platforms. You can find a link in the description below that will lead you to all of those different pages. It is known as the Willow link, as it is w.lo link, and it will have all of the links to that, to the Discord channel, to all different kinds of places, including places to support me as well. At the Citizen of Asgardian level, you get Citizen of Asgardian level is how it's labeled on Patreon. Still need to fix that, but Citizen of Asgard level, you get a shout out at the end of every live stream and video. If you join at the Army of Asgard level, you also access to a giveaways channel, which is featured on the Discord that I have. I know, River, it is very exciting. It is so exciting, where you get giveaways for things like 4K titles, Steelbook titles, etc. Again, I got some 4K Steelbooks of The Punisher, for instance. I've got 4Ks of tons of other movies, so I'm giving those away all the time. So if that sounds interesting to you, join the Army of Asgard level. Also, at the Keep of the Bifrost level, you get all of that stuff, plus you get access to a once a month and maybe twice a month. We're trying to add an extra podcast in there of me and John the Flick Pick Flickinger, where we talk about movies, and also you get to ask your questions. Any questions that you want to ask, you get to ask with that podcast. And then you have the Chosen of Valhalla level, which gives you access to all of those. And also a once a month podcast where you get to be featured with me on the main channel. We all get to talk together about movies, culture, pop culture, anything really that the Chosen want to talk about, or anything the Chosen want to promote is on the table. So if you like that, join at the Chosen of Valhalla level. Also, during your first month of support, you get a free t-shirt. Any t-shirt that you want from the main store, you get access to, and I do ship internationally anywhere in the world. Anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.